Bring yourself onto your mat at about the middle in child pose. So as you settle down onto your shins, taking your knees however wide they need to go for you to feel comfortable in your hips and for your head to rest on the ground. If you need something under your head, then support yourself there. For the first few breaths as you're settling in, you may want to use your hands in front in extended child to push the ground away, press your hips back over your heels, lengthen your low back. Breathing into your low back. And if your shoulders are up around your neck, walk your hands a little closer, press the floor away so that you press your shoulder blades back onto your back. You can wrap your hands back around by your feet or keep them in front or rest them under your head. But take a moment here to find a relaxed pose, to ground, to come onto the mat, into your body. Noticing where your attention is, what sort of energy you have. And as you let your body settle into this posture of a fetal child, Balasana, Garbhasana, let your breath begin to deepen, finding that ocean sound in your throat. Feeling how the pressure of your thighs against your front body moves the breath into the back, so letting your spine and your ribs open. Perhaps feeling the breath all the way down into the pelvis, maybe all the way up into the neck and the shoulders. And this next time that you inhale, uncurl your way up to kneeling. You might need to bring your knees in closer if they were wide. Bring your arms up overhead, palms together, and as you exhale, draw them down along your midline, coming to your heart center in Atmanjali Mudra, a symbol of connecting to your higher self. If you're tuning in with your voice, breathe in for the first of 3. As you inhale, release your hands out in front. Bring yourself forward onto hands and knees, keeping your knees together. And we're going to repeat what we did in the last round, starting with cat presses. So keep your knees together, lift your feet up off the ground, energize through your feet. So it looks like you have Barbie doll feet, and support your knees if you need. Find where your hands are underneath your broad shoulders. Middle fingers pointing straight ahead, and bend your elbows and tuck them in towards your upper ribs. So if you don't feel your upper arms against your upper ribs, your hands may be too far forward. Lengthen your low back by drawing your low belly in and up. Broaden your shoulders so you clear the space around your neck. Keep that ocean sounding breath going, and the next time that you exhale, come forward ahead of your hands by bending your elbows, keeping them tucked in by your sides. Use your inhale, the levitation of the inhale, to bring you back up, moving slowly, slow breath, slow motion. Exhale, come forward ahead of your hands. Think of leaving your tail behind, lifting your low belly in and up so your low back doesn't sway towards the ground. Just come to the point in your movement forward where you don't fall apart. So if your elbows flare out to the sides, your shoulders shrug up, your low back sways, you're too far. Come back to the point where you're integrated. So you're strengthening in your strong place instead of in your falling apart place. This next time that you come down to your lowest point, lift within it, breathe within it. Reintegrate if you're starting to fall apart. Elbows in, shoulders broad, low belly lifted, jaw relaxed. Use your next inhale to press the floor away, come back up, and as you exhale, press back into child for a moment. Use your hands pushing the ground away to take your hips back. You can keep your hands in front, or if you want to release your arms, wrap your hands back around by your feet. Let go of the weight of your head and keep that full breath, breathing into your belly, into your back. Use your next inhale to uncurl, so staying kneeling but uncurling. Push the ground away with your hands, keeping your hips back over your heels. As you come upright, bring your hands behind you. Take a breath in so you don't get lightheaded as you come up. As you bring your hands behind you, lean back into your hands. You can be on your fingertips or your palms, fingers facing whatever way works best for your wrists and shoulders. Look down at your pelvis and see that you probably have a right angle at your hips. Lift your bum up away from your heels and use your butt muscles, your gluteal muscles, to tilt your tailbone towards the back of your knees and to start to iron out that right angle so it's more of a flat plane. And just go to the place where you can breathe. That's going to bring a stretch into your quadricep muscles, the front of your thighs. So if it doesn't, draw your belly in and up so your pubic bones start to lift up towards your ribs and your tailbone stretches towards the front of the mat. And if you're breathing and you still want more intensity, keep that open plane of your pelvis and bend your elbows to bring your butt closer to your heels without losing that open plane in your pelvis. If you want, you can let your head release back if that feels good. If it's not right for your neck, keep your head lifted. Either way, keep your mind's eye focused on what's happening in your pelvis. Use your abdominal muscles on the exhale to draw your low belly, your front hip bones in and up, and your gluteal muscles to tilt your tailbone forward. So you're finding more and more of an open plane and a deeper stretch in the belly of the front thigh muscles. If you're feeling your knees with this deep bend of the knee joint, be up on the balls of your feet instead, with your knees off the ground. Check that you can breathe in that. If you're holding your breath or clenching your jaw, you're too far. Change it, adjust it so you can breathe. Keep the awareness that you have in your pelvis and just walk your knees out as wide as the mat. When you find that width, you have a little bit more room now to stretch your tailbone forward, and there's a little more room in the pelvis. So see how that changes the stretch in the thighs. Might feel like it spirals around the thighs a little differently than it did before. See if you can draw the low belly up, lengthen the tail, breathe deep. If you want, you can bend your elbows or let your head go back. Push the ground away with your hands and keeping your knees as wide as the mat, shift your weight forward. Bring your hands forward ahead of your knees and walk your feet out behind your knees so they're as wide as the edges of the mat. Curl your toes under and shift your weight back so that you're on the balls of your feet and your toes are just slightly off the edges of the mat. If you're a veteran squatter and you know you can take a narrower stance and have your heels on the ground, feel free. But I encourage you to try this wider stance. Check to see that your feet are the same angle from the midline, and then notice where your heels drop to, how far down they can go. They might touch the ground, they might not. And if there's any difference left to right, if it feels like one releases more easily than the other, and then also notice how much weight is on the ball of the foot, across the ball of the foot, between the big toe and the little toe. So just getting a sense of the distribution of weight on your feet. Now we're going to lift the heels up. So bring your heels up and come up onto the balls of your feet so that we can find a little bit more lift into the sternum, the chest. As you lift your sternum up, bring your lower arms inside your knees, lower arms below your elbows, pressing inside your knees to align them over your toes. So you might even see your big toes inside your thighs when you look down. Press your knees out with your lower arms. Use your arm strength. If you have knee issues, you can do this sitting on your butt, using your hands on your ankles or shins to draw yourself up and open your hips. If you're feeling shaky in balance, find a point on the ground to focus your eyes, to anchor you in space. Find your breath in all of this. Use your arms to press your knees out so that you feel more weight dropping into the outer edges of your feet, into the little toe side of your feet. And you start to feel a breathable stretch in your inner thighs. Use that same leverage of your arms pressing out to draw your chest up, your sternum up, and your shoulder blades down onto your back. So rolling them back, broad shoulders. Then keep everything that you've just created, broad upper back and shoulders, lifted sternum, knees out over the feet, weight evenly across the balls of the feet as you start to take your heels just a little closer to the ground. Micro movements, really small. And notice, where does that change your balance? Where does that change your knees and your shoulders by pulling them inwards? So that's your edge. That's the place where any farther you lose your integrity. But if you don't step up to that point, then you're hanging out without really getting involved. So find the edge where you can breathe, where you feel like you're creating some change without creating more tension. And then to test what's holding what, take one more breath to press your knees out with your arms and draw your chest up. And then bring your arms out parallel to each other so they don't touch your legs anymore. And see if you can find your leg muscles in your upper hips and thighs to hold your knees open. So press the outer edges of your feet into the ground. And find your core muscles in your belly and low back to hold your rib cage up so that your shoulders can drop down. Release forward into table from here. So bring your hands down, your knees under your front hips. And if you're feeling your shins, that's normal from squatting. So we're going to press them out with cat pose. Press your shins and your feet down into the ground as you plant the base of your fingers and arch your back up. Use all of that planting down to leverage your back up. And then take a couple of spinal flexes, cat and cow. And as you inhale next, bring yourself to neutral, to table. So you're not arching in either direction. Then turn sideways on your mat. If you're practicing with someone else, turn to face them. So the mat stays where it is, but you're bringing yourself into table position, but facing off the side edge of the mat. We're going to move into frog pose, starting under the hips and then little by little walking them out to where, if possible, you come to the inner thigh instead of the knee joint. Not the top of the kneecap itself, but the inner thigh if you can. If you have a knee injury, you can do the same posture on your back and just press your knees out to the sides with your hands. Once you get your knees out to the place where you can breathe, where you feel okay, look back and see that your toes line up with your ankles and your ankles line up with your knees and your knees are still in line with your hips. So you have right angles at all the joints of your legs, like frog's legs. Energize a little bit through your belly, so tucking your belly up to lengthen your low back. The hips are right between the knees on this, so if you've shifted your hips forward or back, then realign. And it might mean you have to readjust where your legs are. So this is one where really the only thing you have to do once you get the alignment is to breathe and surrender. The stretch is on the inner thighs, into the groin. If you're clenching tight in your jaw, adjust the posture so that you can soften your face, deepen your breath. Use your breath to stay with whatever intensity you have going on in that stretch. If it starts to soften and release, great. If you'd like to intensify it again and shift your edge out a little bit more, then take your tailbone back towards your feet just a little bit. And just a little shift should help you reignite that stretch in your inner thighs, keeping your shoulders on your back. And this is a great place to practice Ujjayi Pranayama. So if you're still fairly new to that breathing practice, to ocean-sounding victorious breath, then tune in here and listen along and see if you can find your own version of the sound that I make as you narrow your throat and breathe through your nose. So you're finding that inner calm with whatever intensity this posture or life in general throws at you. There are two options for coming out of this posture. The important thing with both of them is that you don't yank those inner thigh muscles back into action after you've invited them to open so deeply. So you can either release into Splat frog by bringing your belly closer to the ground, letting your legs start to lengthen. This may or may not work for your knees, so if Splat frog doesn't work, just come out of it the same way you came into it, by bringing weight into your hands and walking one knee and foot in a little bit, and then the other, and then the other, little by little, bringing your knees closer together, using your arm strength more than your inner thigh strength. Once you're either belly down or on your knees, then swim around to face off the short end of your mat and come back into squat. Bring your feet to the edges of the mat and see if Mandukasana, frog pose, has influenced your squat at all. You're doing with your arms and squat what the floor and gravity was doing in frog. In the coming weeks, we're going to apply all of this work and bring it up off the ground. The hips are a key area, and as you've probably worked out, that's one of our main focus points today, hip opening. The hips are one of the main areas of tightness for many people, so finding where your heels go as close to the ground as works for you, to also lift your sternum, roll your shoulders onto your back, and press your knees open out over your feet. So if you tend to feel a lot of weight in the big toe ball of your foot or your inner arch dropping down, then lift your heels a little higher. Press your knees a little wider, so you get the alignment of the knees over the feet. And this is a great posture for feeling how one thing tugs another, how each thing is affected by the movement of another, how we're all connected in our bodies. So give that one more breath, and then as you exhale, release into cat and cow. Press your shins down to open them out. Arch your back up, just a couple breaths, rolling from your tail to your head. The next time that you exhale, press back as you would for extended child. So take your hips back over your heels. Release your head down to the ground. If it doesn't reach, take your knees wider. Or if you still have trouble, then rest your head on a blanket or a block. Bring your arms around behind your back. Interlace your fingers and draw your palms towards each other. So do that by engaging your upper back muscles. Draw your inner shoulder blades towards each other and inner elbows and wrists towards each other. And then see how much you can lift your arms away from your back, still drawing them in towards each other, and breathe, letting your head continue to rest on the ground or your support and your hips to rest on your heels. Or you can do this posture upright in kneeling pose. Yoga Mudra, the symbol of yoga. Using the action of the upper back and the arms to open the upper chest and breathing into that. Move your breath into your upper lungs and ribs. If you're really flexible here, and as you lift your arms, your shoulders slide down into your neck, aim your interlaced fingers up away from your head, so your shoulders lift away from your neck. Give that one more breath, and as you exhale, release your arms down. Unlace your fingers and stretch your arms out long behind you. Come to rest in child. Letting go of the weight of your arms. Notice how your upper back feels. And breath by breath, letting your breath get softer and easier, less active, less sound in the throat. Letting the weight of your body sink down. Pausing for a moment to take in what you've done, what you're feeling. And then bringing your attention to your breath, notice how it's happening without effort. You may want to bring a little bit more energy into the breath to help you uncurl and come upright. Let your next inhale uncurl you, lift your arms out to the side, stretch them up overhead, gather up whatever you'd like to carry with you, drawing your hands down and in. Palms together at your heart, acknowledging yourself for being present with yourself. Namaste.